Hello, I'm Stefan Graeber, project leader for LXD, and this is the LXD 5.10 release livestream. Somewhat similar to the previous release, LXD 5.9, this is a release that was made a bit shorter because of the shutdown that we do at Canonical over the holidays. So we always take off the 2 weeks that kind of cover Christmas and New Year's, which meant that the LXD team effectively released 5.9 and announced it right before that. And we've now released 5.10 just a couple of weeks after coming back to work. So there's a lot less in there than in some other LXD releases. This is going to change because we have quite a bit of work already lined up, ready to be included now. So LXD 5.11 is going to be quite a bit of a busier release. That's not to say that LXD 5.10 has nothing for you in there either. We did a fair amount of performance improvements, especially around the database again, as well as a number of bug fixes. And as we're going to be going through right now, a few new features. All right. So what's new in there? Well, the first two things to highlight are documentation related. Ruth on our team, who's our technical author, has been doing a great job going kind of topic by topic within LXD docs and reorganizing it. And what we've landed in 5.10 is the entire rework of the instance section. So that was a pretty big one. That was a long time coming, as well as the first steps towards reworking the server documentation as well. We still have a few more topics to go through, things like projects, images, and a few others still need to go through this work. But it's really good to see our documentation kind of taking shape and having a more consistent structure that makes it much easier for people to find things, but also improves on like sections and anchors so that it's very easy for us to refer to the documentation from other places, whether it's on our community forum or YouTube comments or anywhere else. We can easily link to just the right spot of the documentation, which is really useful. And yeah, we've got a lot more work on documentation to go kind of in that direction. We are also starting to hook up like a whole bunch of different things to the docs to see that there's like no broken links. We're looking at what we can do to generate more of the documentation from the source code so that we can't possibly forget to document a config option and all that kind of stuff. There's really a lot that we're going to be working on over the next few months on that. All right. The next piece we've done is came from a user request on our forum, which was around getting the ability to get the top instances for network traffics, specifically like send and receive traffic and number of packets per second. So that's done in our Grafana dashboard. The data was actually already present inside of the LXD metrics API and inside of the Prometheus database. It was just some more work needed to get the dashboard updated to show that data. I actually need to fix the announcement here. The image was broken like half an hour ago, and I thought I fixed the link, but the new link I put was actually the dashboard prior to the change. So you're gonna see in a few minutes when I show it what it actually looks like. This is our dashboard before we added those new graphs. And the last thing we've added, this was a contribution from one of our users, is support for configuring the queue length on network devices. This specifically works for containers and for containers using virtual Ethernet devices. So that means bridged peer-to-peer and routed network types within LXD. With those, it's now possible to set a config key called queue.tx.length and set that to the value of the transmit queue size that you'd like to see applied. The default on Linux, I believe, is 1,000. Yeah, I think it's 1,000. And so you can increase the queue length or reduce it depending on what it is you're trying to get. In most cases, increasing the queue length will get you potentially slightly better throughput through better traffic management within Linux, but at the cost of higher latency. A shorter queue will usually give you higher lower latency, but potentially lower throughput and also potentially higher CPU usage. So it's something that's mostly relevant for very busy systems in very specific situations. But if you're in one of those and feel like running, I don't know, a very busy CDN or similar type workloads. This is something you might want to look at and tweak. All right, so let's go through those into a tiny bit more details. And the first thing here is the reworked instance documentation. So if we go look at the docs, that's what it looks like now. And what's new here is the instances section we can see here on the left. And if you go in there, you've got an introduction for the different type of instances, some how-tos for how to create instances, manage them, configure. So it's a bunch of that was existing content that was like on the massive instances page we had before that's been split out. Some other is new content that was written. I've got some explanation around snapshots, how profiles function, and then some of the basic stuff like running commands, accessing the console, accessing different files from the text instances. And then what the massive tables a lot of people refer to, they are now under instance configuration. So if we expand that, there's a bit of an overview explaining instance properties, instance options, instance devices. Then properties kind of covers those. Options is where all of the tables are now. So that's all nicely split up and easy to find in there. And for the devices, which were also all part of that one massive page, they're now split in individual pages. So you can expand the devices section that shows you all the different types. And say if you want to see what are the options for GPUs or something like that. Oops, clicked the wrong one. For GPUs, then you get the page specifically for the GPU device. This should make it quite a bit easier for us to add more things without really overwhelming that one massive page we had. It was getting pretty hard to find anything. So the new structure really makes that quite a bit easier. And the next step, the next one is very similar. It's for the server reorg. So this one is still under the manage LXD heading. We'll see if that changes, but actually the server configuration page has been reworked. And it is still one page, and we don't really see any reason to change that immediately. But it has a similar layout for the config keys. So each of the section has now its own chunk that's easier to link to because all of those have anchors we can link to very easily. And yeah, everything has been updated with the same markup and same look as everything else. All right, so that's the docs update. I said that we're actively working on getting kind of the same kind of structure for everything. So now instances is sorted out, storage, networking, clustering are all already looking good for a little while. We've got images that still needs a bunch of love, like it doesn't have the actual same structure underneath it. And we'll do the same work on projects in some other areas. So you can expect the doc to keep improving over the next few months. Alrighty, the next thing is that new pie chart, new set of pie charts in Grafana. So if we look at my Grafana setup here, we can see it's actually different from the screenshot. As I said, the screenshot is outdated, so I need to go and change it. But here we could just see the 3 pie charts for CPU usage, memory, and rootfs usage. And if you look at what I have here now, I've got CPU, memory, rootfs, that hasn't changed, but we've got a new row here for the network. So we can see the top 5 instances for network traffic, network transmit traffic specifically. So in this case, it's my VPN server and one of the HE proxy servers. For receive, again, VPN is here, and the top one is the HE proxy. Now, for number of packets, this is VPN, and this is also VPN. But that gives you a very easy way to see what's the busiest as far as network on your deployment. And as usual, you can go and change that to show different numbers. If you want to see the top 10 instances, now you're seeing the top 10. So that's pretty nice and easy to do. You can also switch to different projects to go look at the same data, data for the projects that way. All right. And the last thing on there is actually the only thing that I'll need a terminal to demo. It's the support for customizing the transmit queue length. So if I switch over to a terminal, there we go. Here I'm running inside of my demo project. So I just have the one instance running. This is an Ubuntu 22.04, I believe. Yeah. Okay, and if we look at the ifconfig output here, we can see TX queue length is 1000. So that's the default, as we'd expect. Now, if we get out of it and we stop the instance and we do device override, oops, give 0, and then the new config key, so that's queue.tx.length, and say we want to set it to 2000. Oops, better if I put the instance name here, u1. Okay, and then start the instance back. Now, if we look at the config output, we can see that the txq length here has been increased. The reason why we need a config key is because this is something that is to be applied both on the host and inside of the container, and is not something that even root in the container is allowed to do. So if you were to just, I think it's just this normally for the config key, txq, yeah. So that's how you would normally change it inside of a Linux system, but you can't because of the way the virtual Ethernet device functions. So a container can't go and change its own setting, which is why we've got that config key instead. All right, and that's it for LXD 5.10. So hopefully it's a pretty nice, uneventful update for everyone. It started to roll out now, so we expect that to hit all of our Snap users within the next 48 hours. Other distros are going to do their packaging, and usually that happens in just a few days, so you should be getting it pretty soon. For most users, this should just look like a nice bug fix release, unless you were really waiting for the txq length configuration bits, in which case this is going to bring them to you. And as I said, LXD 5.11 is going to be quite a bit more feature-packed release as it goes. Just looking at the chat here, I see there's a question around where the cat is. Ever since I moved to this new place, even though it does have a pillow back here, it tends to prefer sleeping on his cat tree in another room, unfortunately. So I would need to go and drag him here. Maybe I'll do that next time. But yeah, he's not been hanging out quite as much, unfortunately. All right. Well, if you've got any questions about this, feel free to ask them down below in the comment section, or you can go on the forum and just ask them directly in the LXD 5.10 thread that I've got open here. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.